Hey everyone, welcome back to part 2 of my NieR analysis. If you haven't already watched part 1, then I heavily recommend you do, or you'll be pretty lost. And speaking of part 1, I feel it's important to correct a couple of mistakes I made, as I don't want misinformation spreading around due to my video. If you remember the scene where I spoke about Red Eye resembling Kaine, this is false. The picture isn't from Grimoire NieR at all, which proves how you should always double check your sources. Secondly, Angelus didn't plummet to the ground floor, instead she was impaled on Tokyo Tower and was retrieved from there. Also, if you were wondering who animated this fantastic new intro, then you must go check out the incredibly talented Volta Bass. It's almost a crime how animators as talented as he is have this little subscribers, so please go check him out and send love his way. His Twitter is down in the description as well. Right, I don't want to keep you any longer, so let's jump straight back into the fray. At the ending of part 1, I left you with the introduction of a new central character, Kainé. But before we go a little deeper into the mentality and biology of our new heroine, you may have noticed this lumbering fuck crawling over to interrupt a squabble that broke out a little while before. This colossal shade is known as Hook and has a dark connection to Kainé's past.
You're gonna pull out your teeth and cram them up your ass!
And as much as I love Kainé, sometimes the vulgarities written into the script come out a little, I think try-hard edgy is the best word to use here, though I'm sure that was the point.
Don't stare your eyes out and piss your sockets.
The fight with Hook doesn't last all that long, as Kainé uses one final burst of energy to blind the beast in one eye, causing it to slink away to tend to its wounds. Vice comments on the fact that Kainé is possessed by a shade, allowing her to wield magic. And that isn't all that Kainé keeps secret from the world. If you pay attention to some dialogue text later into the game, you'll note that people fear Kainé and mock her for her differences. What they mean by this is Kainé's hermaphroditism. Kainé possesses female and male genitals, and the game handles it in the best way possible. By not bringing attention to it at all, it's merely hinted at, only being confirmed by the director himself later in an interview. Though I should probably bring up the fact that not everything was down to Taro. The co-writer Sawako Natori played a big part in making NieR and Drakengard the experiences we received. She was the individual in charge of the script writing, and I assume Taro's direction plays a large part in the script's many dark paths, so a lot of Kainé's backstory is down to her. What's fantastic about the aforementioned interview with Taro and Natori regarding Kainé's gender is how little Taro wanted to draw attention to it. This is exactly how I believe gender and sexuality should be approached in video games or media in general. And this is definitely a personal thing rather than a definitive statement. I can see you all tugging at your collars right now. Clemps, stop! Oh god, what are you doing? Fucking stop! Taro was quoted saying, "To me, Kainé being a hermaphrodite wasn't really a point of importance, since people like that do exist in reality. We just don't know about them." I was actually surprised it garnered so much attention after the game was released. There's a similar quote about another one of his characters' homosexuality, who for now shall not be named. If we compare this to current day BioWare, a company who proudly scream from the high heavens that their game includes LGBT characters, please believe us, oh please God believe us, the difference is obvious. If we look around, we can definitely see homosexuals, few in number they may be. I'm not trying to say don't discriminate or anything like that, just people like that exist, it's simply the way the world works. When Taro says I'm not trying to say don't discriminate, I have a feeling he's not trying to tell you to discriminate or that it's okay, it's that he's not trying to shove his opinion down your throat, and I massively appreciate that as a player. Anyways, I'm going to drag myself away from that topic, but we'll be revisiting it later when we meet another character who warranted a direct answer from Taro. After leaving Kainé by herself to recover, we head back to the village, and the story is kind of put on hold for a bit. We're sent to do odd jobs in Seafront, which in the grand scale of things is a glorified side quest hub, but it looks pretty as fuck, so I'm not exactly complaining. Things start to pick up again. We're sent to strengthen our weapons due to the increasing number of shades that are lurking in the shadows near Seafront and the village. When we reach the intended location, the scrap heap, we're introduced to a couple of minor characters, Jacob and Gideon.
Jacob, I'm hungry.
Shut your fucking mouth!
NieR is sent off to collect materials due to their mother not coming back from her scrap collecting. Reaching the end grants us a nice boss fight where it's obvious Taro hasn't fallen out of love with his fourth wall breaking just yet.
It's working!
Really, the mouth. Such an obvious weak point.
Oh heck yeah, I've played video game. It's also worth pointing out that the sealed verses are meant to be finding as a shot-in-the-dark remedy to cure Yona's disease are coincidentally found around each boss we kill. Talk about lucky. Upon defeating the defense mechanism, we find the mother, dead, supposedly running away to live with her secret lover in peace, away from her children. I mean, can you blame her?
Mom was always so frustrated, you know? Torn between her duty to us and her heart.
We found this next to her.
It smells like her bread. It smells like her. Damn it. I'm not gonna cry if Gideon sees me like this. Damn it.
Parting from the boys and unlocking the option to upgrade our weapons with the right materials, we're sent back to the area where the village is being attacked by shades. We reunite with Kainé and Hook, who appears to be having just the best time ever. The battle with Hook is an annoyance for sure. When you use your finishing blow on certain body parts, he'll jump over to another part of the area, which means navigating this maze of a town. If you've played the game enough, you'll be able to get your way across easier, but as you can see here, half of the boss fight was spent fighting with my lack of direction. When Hook is nearing defeat, he exhales a hallucinatory gas that causes Kainé to hear a voice she hasn't heard in many years.
Kainé, it's me, Grandma.
When Kainé was a little girl, she had a grandmother. The foul-mouthed old woman was named Kali, or Curly in Replicant. A vulgar yet loving old lady, she protected Kainé from the cruelty of others and taught her about her inner strength and outer strength, giving her the motivation to keep pushing forward. She even made her a wreath made of lunar tears, the legendary flower that most people could live their entire lives without seeing one. But Kali had somehow achieved the impossible. They lived their lives in a strange variation of peace, with comfort at home but ostracization out in the village due to Kainé's physical differences. And as the years went on and Kali's health started to deteriorate, most of her responsibilities laid on Kainé's shoulders. However, on one seemingly normal day, Kainé returned home to see it ablaze. A large shade tortured the aging Kali underfoot as it laughed at Kainé's inability to stop it. This shade was Hook.
Why go on living anymore, Kainé?
Is that it?
Hmm?
Are you done talking?
Kainé, don't speak to your grandma like that.
You're going to stop talking now. And then I'm going to walk over to you and very carefully extend my hand, reach into your chest, and pull out your fucking heart!
After Hook is killed off for good and Kainé is close to death, NieR's voice somehow brings her back from the brink. This scene, while sweet to an extent, is definitely a good argument as to why Brother NieR would make an overall more suitable protagonist. The way Papa NieR spouts off about how he and Kainé are friends now and his general body movements come off as incredibly awkward, especially for a 39-year-old man.
Yes. You and I are friends now.
Ugh, maybe I'm alone here? I don't know, it just feels like if an older gentleman rescued me and delivered that line, I'd laugh in his face, then promptly vomit. Anyways, I'm picking nits. Upon rescuing Kainé, she brings up the fact that she knows a king who suffers from the Black Scrawl. I mean, who doesn't? And he and his people might have come up with a cure since her absence. So, on that note, we head towards the bizarre desert city of Facade, a city which now welcomes Kainé in with open arms due to saving one of their children from a pack of wolves back in the day. Facade is a city composed of citizens who speak a strange language and follow a few strict set of rules. Sorry, did I say a few? I meant a few fucking thousand. One of these rules is to wear a mask that covers your face. The explanation as to why is never directly stated. Maybe it was a gag that eventually turned into a gimmick. When we enter the city, we're introduced, kinda, to a character named Fira, a young girl who was sent to Facade by disgraced parents due to her face becoming disfigured due to burns. And because of Rule 32, she isn't allowed to speak due to not having land identification. I'm not sure if this rule is specifically for people living in Facade, because NieR and Frem seem to be perfectly fine having a chat if Fira guides us around the town for what seems like 10 bloody hours. After we finally stop following Fira around, we're told that the king has passed away due to the scrawl, making a lot of the journey ultimately pointless. However, there's a slight comedic scene where we find out that the Prince of Facade has gone missing in a location called the Barren Temple, and that Rule 83,348, if the prince goes missing, find him straight away, and Rule 50,527, only royalty may enter the temple, contradict each other. Kainé, coincidentally, knows of a rule that allows her to bend the rules a little due to the city being in debt to her. And so, we're off to the Barren Temple. Upon this playthrough, I noticed something familiar with a boss design. Doesn't this boss, and hell, these obstacles, remind anyone of the gargoyle cubes from the Drakengard series? A nice little reference for anyone who kept their eyes open. Completing this dungeon introduces us to another minor character, whose importance will open up more as the game continues. For now though, he serves as another excuse for a cheeky reference. Oh heck yeah, I've played a video game. So the prince, now king, is saved, yay! Being in debt to NieR requests they make a new rule to allow citizens to veto rules that they don't like, yay! We can finally go to a section of the game where I'm not just recapping the story, can actually go into depth about something, fucking yay! When NieR returns home, he has a dream. Oh boy, here we go. The dream isn't displayed to us visually, and we're instead required to read and visualize it for ourselves. Fair enough, I don't have an issue with this. However, when we eventually get to the area his dream was hinting towards the location of another sealed verse, we're introduced to the Forest of Myth. I'm imagining a few of the initiated are rolling their eyes right now. The Forest of Myth is a village in a forest. The inhabitants have all been put into a state of seemingly eternal sleep named the Death Dream. I remember being pretty stoked reaching here for the first time because I'm naturally drawn to forest levels. But much to my disappointment, the real problem with this level is how you complete it. It's a text adventure. Symptoms of the Death Dream are being put into a state of constant sleep and only being able to see and speak through text. Sayonara Woodland Adventures. The basis of this text adventure is to complete a riddle, then continue on. If you fail at said riddle, then I hope you like button mashing to get past all the same text again. Now the cause of the Death Dream is rather peculiar. I'm getting ahead of myself a little, but I feel it's important to introduce this character now rather than later. The Death Dream is being created by a colossal tree known as Sleeping Beauty, or at least it's a tree at first glance. Hold on, Clemps, is there any relevance to these bosses and characters being named after fairy tale characters? Does this link into something? The answer to this is not exactly. Apparently the reasoning behind this was NieR's original scrapped plot, which was about worlds within picture books being real and the heroes of the game needing to defeat villainous characters that come from within the books. How this story eventually evolved into a spin-off to Drakengard is a complete mystery, but I'm happy things ended up the way they did. Anyways, back to the tree. What a lot of people don't realise is Sleeping Beauty is an incredibly ancient sentient network computer being fueled by demonic element. Its purpose is to store the history of the past 2,000 years or so. But why? I'm not entirely sure whether Sleeping Beauty's real appearance is covered by the overgrown tree or if it's the tree itself. But regardless, its existence is crucial for one of the most elusive of endings, ending E. NieR and Weiss managed to break the village out of its slumber, but this definitely isn't the last time we're going to be visiting the Forest of Myth or coming in contact with the mysterious Sleeping Beauty. When NieR returns home, he finds out something that shocks him to his core. Yona has been talking to her fucking boy, the hussy! She begs her father to go visit her new pen pal, as according to the letters, he's sick and in a lot of trouble. NieR accepts, being unable to turn down his beloved daughter. They're like a married couple, it's too cute. When we reach the location of Yona's new friend, the second we swing open the gates, all of the colour from the surrounding area is drained. To begin with, we have no real clue as to why this is the case, but the more we explore and get to know its inhabitants, the more we'll come to realise the artistic reason to making it this way. Something you may notice during this particular segment is what I like to think are callbacks to other games like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, due to the camera changes and general creepy manor aesthetic. Reaching one particular room introduces us to another central character, and one that will eventually become a staple in the franchise itself. The young, soft-spoken boy named Emil is blind. However, he isn't blind due to a defect, he's blind out of choice. He wears a blindfold due to petrifying anyone who makes direct eye contact with him, which makes this courtyard full of statues even more creepy. This is one of the reasons why I believe the monochrome colour scheme works for the manor. It gives off a feeling like time itself has been stopped entirely, which reflects in many victims left in the courtyard, their time unfortunately stolen from them. We're sent to find Emil's butler, Sebastian, to find out more information about the letter that Emil apparently didn't send. Turns out the sender of the pen pal letter to Yona was the butler himself, which is also pretty creepy. He states the reasoning behind this was to ask for help from NieR, but Yona misinterpreted it as something else entirely. NieR accepts the butler's request to escort Emil through the shade-filled halls to a location within the manor that may hold a cure for his eyes. The library, which holds the apparent cure, also holds an enemy which looks very similar to our floating friend Weiss. Grimoire Rubrum is fairly easy to take down, but it opens up a lot more questions about Weiss's origins and who the book even is. If there are other grimoires, what are their functions? What is their purpose? We'll find out soon enough.
Fuck! This book is a real asshole!
Incredible!
As it would turn out, the information stored within Grimoire Rubrum wasn't a cure for Emil, but more so a cure for individuals who went through the petrification process. So for now, we leave Emil's mansion. The scene we get before leaving to the village, however, is one of my personal favourites. Maybe I'm biased because it's another Kainé scene, but they allow us to see a different side to her than we have before. She empathises with his hatred of his eyes due to being ashamed of her own body in the past. It's just really well directed and hits me on so many levels. The physicality of the scene is wonderful. The way she moves her hand here is something you never expect from an individual as violent as Kainé, proving to us through a physical gesture that there's so much more to her than meets the eye. She allows Emil to touch the shade part of her body, then whispers a request into his ear, referring to the shade. He visibly flinches at this, and for now, this is all we're going to get.
Hopefully it was nothing inappropriate for a young man of his age.
The truth, hussy!
And after that amazing scene, we're sent back to the village, where Yona's sniffles send NieR on a seemingly innocent fetch quest to gather some herbs to ease her coughing. However...
Emil?
So much pressure. Oh god, there's so many of them.
So many what?
Get out. Get out of the village. The shades are coming.
It's at this stage in the game where the seemingly comfortable JRPG experience is torn from under our feet and the suffering is slowly being drip-fed into our systems.
The hell's going on?
No time. Get everyone into the lot. Someone make sure Yona's safe!
Don't worry. I'll go and get her.
Within minutes of the shades breaking into NieR's quiet little village, a Behemoth-sized shade named Jack of Hearts breaks the protective gate and begins its rampage.
We can't let him get to the library no matter what!
I love you.
Within the library, Emil is fighting back the shades via means of petrification, but Jack isn't ready to keel over and defeat just yet. After slamming his ass into the basement, you'd think victory is all but assured, right?
Give me the key!
Right!
Fuck.
Oh, let's break it! Damn! Oh, time to accelerate! Dear God.
Without a doubt, this was a point in the game where I started to question what the fuck was going on. Something you may notice right off the bat is the resemblance of our main character and the Shadowlord, leader of the Shades. This becomes especially apparent if you look at Replicant's version, which resembles the younger counterpart, and if I can speak freely, just looks miles more interesting. With this though, there's no denying that the Shadowlord and NieR have a connection. Then with the reveal of the aforementioned Grimoire Noir, who we've met at a previous point in the game, well, it definitely makes you think, doesn't it? Vice and Noir have what I'm assuming to be a telepathic conversation where yet again the physical acting is on point for an entire cutscene where the characters in question are fucking books.
No, I cannot. I will not.
The time has come for us to create a new and perfect world.
Noir tells Vice that both of the books are servants of the Shadowlords, and since they have collected all of the sealed verses, they can fuse together to, and I quote, set free shades to the world. He even lets on to the fact that NieR finding Vice and being told to collect the sealed verses were all set in motion by the Shadowlord. Vice, ultimately confused by the current events, begins to hear the voices of his companions calling him back, one in particular being the Oscar-worthy performance of Kainé.
Start making sense, you rotten book, or you're gonna be sorry. Maybe I'll rip your pages out one by one, or maybe I'll put you in the goddamn furnace. How can someone with such a big smart brain get hypnotized like a little bitch, huh? Oh, Shadowlord, I love you, Shadowlord. Come over here and give Vice a big sloppy kiss, Shadowlord. Now pull your head out of your goddamn ass and start fucking helping us!
The rest of them turn my stomach a little with the whole power of friendship vibe they have going on, but Vice eventually breaks free of Noir's control.
Vice!
Good to see you, Kaine. Although I don't think anyone has ever accused me of being a little bitch before.
We must unite. We must become as one.
I don't like you.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
In a final act of desperation, Noir sends an attack hurtling towards Vice, but NieR takes the blow. The Shadowlord wins the fight and takes off with an unconscious Yona. Not only is NieR unable to fight, but Kainé is realizing time is running out for her as well, as the Shade is about to take over her body. She requests to be petrified in front of a basement door, stopping Jack from making his escape and the Shade from taking over.
No more crying, okay? Okay. Grow strong.
What's wrong with your face?
Never lose hope. Vice.
Spare me the goodbye, hussy. I imagine it will take more than this to kill you.
I doubt it.
Welcome to NieR, 5 years in the future after Yona's kidnapping. This is where the game really comes into its element, and it's a shame because I know for a fact many people dropped it before this point. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering why Papa NieR is now wearing dirty briefs on his head, and the honest answer is, they kind of make him look cool. Maybe they had no idea how to differentiate this Papa NieR with a time skip version. Again, this is something Replicant did much better than Gestalt. Now the game has changed its motive. Instead of hunting for a cure for Yona, we're hunting for Yona and a cure for Kainé. Before Popola hands us a letter from Emil stating he may know a cure for Kainé's petrification, NieR brings up the fact that it's as if Popola hasn't aged a day since the first time he met her. But she brushes it off as an embarrassing compliment. Surprisingly, this is a pretty sly little nod to events that will later unravel. Upon reaching Emil's mansion for the second time, he tells us he's found some information about a room in the manor called the Planning Room, which might be able to grant Emil the power to harness all forms of magic, which can not only revive Kainé, but might be able to grant him the ability to cure his eyes. I also feel like it's a good point to bring up how on earth magic is even a thing in this universe, as I forgot to bring it up in part 1, when I brought up the fact that Angelus's corpse released a particle into the world known as demonic element. Well, by harnessing demonic element, scientists were able to develop magic. Note how a lot of the magic used in the game is blood red, just like Angelus herself. We're led to the courtyard where the secret entrance to the manor is revealed, and hello? Well, this is getting more and more suspicious by the minute. Turns out the manor was a front this whole time. Back in the era after the Queen Beast fell, a group of who I assumed to be scientists and military personnel were involved in using demonic element in order to make weapons to combat the waves of Legion that was slowly spreading across the map. The method they used to make these weapons, however, were immoral. 2 human children, codenamed Number 6 and Number 7, were experimented on in order to make this perfect weapon. Eventually, Number 6 was a supposed success, but due to leaving her human heart within the finished product, she went berserk, almost destroying the facility in the process. The human child, Number 7, was quickly given the ability to petrify anything that came in contact with his eyes, allowing the skeletal beast to be kept out of harm's way. Number 6 was named Halua, and was Emil's one and only sibling.
My sister. Thank you, Halua.
Good God.
Welcome back, Emil. You've been through a lot.
But my body.
Yeah, I know.
I can't stand to be with you when I look like this.
What did I tell you? We're here for you, no matter what.
Oh my god, look at all of you! Thank you to every subscriber, new and old, for continuing to support my dream of entertaining people. Thank you to everyone who shouted me out, and you know exactly who you are. You're the lifeblood of this channel, and I wouldn't have gotten this far without you. Hugs and kisses, and I'll see you all in part 3.